And I'm gonna go on Facebook and I'm gonna let people in as they come in. Going to go live on Facebook. On page. Yep, got it. So it's going to be live on Facebook and it's going to be recording. So it will also be available on, it's going to be available on YouTube later. I'll let people in as they come. And the last thing to do is to share screen. So it's very methodical. Okay. And my laptop's being a little slow right now, probably to handle the influx of people, but please bear with me. But can folks see the presentation? You can put a thumbs up or...
Yes.
I see a thumbs up.
Good.
Great, great. So yes, in any case, thank you and welcome everybody to the Capital Group of the North Carolina Sierra Club's monthly evening program. I am your MC, Hua Huang. I'm the current chair for the Capital Group of North Carolina Sierra Club. So tonight we're going to be talking about a statewide issue concerning Duke Energy's draft carbon plan and what's in it and why you should be concerned, and featuring Cassie Gavin, who's our government relations director. But before we jump in, there's a few announcements I want to make concerning local and statewide related news and announcements for the next 10 minutes or so. So for those who are new to the monthly program that we've been hosting on Zoom these past couple of years, if you're not familiar with Sierra Club, we are one of the oldest, largest grassroots environmental organization in the United States. And we have over 2.4 million supporters, been defending nature since 1892, dealing with policies that include climate change, addressing concerns with air and water pollution, fossil fuels, renewable energy, and parks and forest land protection. With the Capital Group alone, we are just one group of the many across North Carolina that's under the giant branch we call the North Carolina chapter, Sierra Club. And just Capital Group alone, we have over 10,000 members and supporters, and there are 11 counties that's under our jurisdiction. Even though most of our activities take place here in Wake County, we are starting to get some members from other places like Cumberland and Franklin County, and hopefully we'll be able to expand our influence as we're trying to bring more people in to address, the issue with climate justice with a unified front. But then in the meantime, I don't want to breaking news about the Roe v. Wade ruling that just recently happened. And that is something that's going to impact a lot of people in this country. And just want to let you know, Sierra Club at a national level is 100% an ally on reproductive justice. The Sierra Club's managing director, Eva Hernandez-Simmons, had a statement just last week stating that regardless of the ruling, every person in America still deserves the right to live in healthy and safe communities with access to clean air, clean water, and healthcare. And Sierra Club will continue to support every person's right to self-determination and bodily autonomy. And we'll continue to rise and fight alongside allies to ensure reproductive justice for all. And that's the key thing with reproductive justice. One of the main issue with one of the main reasons why we should be allies to reproductive justice. And for one thing, air and water pollution, it impacts human health, and that includes reproductive health. all the more reason why we need to stand behind reproductive justice. So if you want to check the full statement, we have it on the Sierra Club website for list of press releases. So go ahead and check that out when you have time. And just real quick on the conservation update. So this is the crux of our meeting tonight, but just to give you a brief, I guess, synopsis, Duke basically released a draft of the carbon plan as of May 15th, and there will be opportunity for public input in July and August in 2022. And here are the list of dates and location where they will be taking place. You'll notice that in August, both of the meetings will be happening online on WebEx. So, but before going in, it'll be good to learn about what the carbon plan is all about, and that's why you're here tonight. And some more conservation news on the state level. So with offshore wind, so this is currently with the work with the coalition, we're advising DEQ and BOEM to ensure responsible development and to address concerns about environmental impacts on the front end of the projects. There's also the Wildlife and Environment Subcommittee, where they'll have a forum next month in Wilmington, July 19th and 2022. And if anybody is interested in that, just let me know, and I'll try to get more information for you over the email after this webinar. And in terms of the wood pellet issue, so active energy renewable power, which the North Carolina Sierra Club spoke up against when they were trying to build a facility in Lumberton. They are leaving Lumberton and they are selling a site. Also, Europe is limiting US tree import, which is good news. Southern Forest Conservation Coalition, I think just not too long ago, they hosted a boat trip to Cape Fear River to educate on ecosystem and biodiversity. Now, next up on the issue is CAFOs and biogas. This is, for those who are not familiar with CAFOs, this has to do with utilizing of things like hog farms as what they believe to, what some of the proponents believe to be a way to do alternative fuel, but we have been saying that biogas is neither clean nor renewable. So there's been call for public comment for DEQ to use the authority granted through federal statute to address the issue that's brought about by biogas. And next up on the news, with regard to PFAS. So there's a helpful polluter accountability bill that has been rolled out at the House Judiciary Committee. That's H1095, also known as PFAS pollution and polluter liability. And the legislation is going to hold polluters liable for PFAS pollution by making them pay for, sorry, can folks mute the, can folks mute the microphone? Sorry. Yeah. I'm not sure who was the, please mute the, yeah, sorry about that. All right. So where was I? All right, so PFAS. So yes, so H1095 is supposed to hold the polluters accountable. So that's pretty good. It's currently being referred to the House Environment Committee, chaired by Representative Pat McElcraft and Larry Yarborough. So it's up to these chairs to decide whether or not these bills will be brought before the committee for a vote. We're optimistic, but we shall see. But we know the governor is supposedly putting pressures for the legislature to pass this. And also DEQ is releasing a PFAS strategy to promote PFAS bill and other actions to address the pollution. And here's one other statewide issue that might require your attention and action. That's H991. That's the ALJ authority to void rule. So this is concerning because it's gonna make agency environmental rulemaking even more complicated than it already is, and it potentially voids environmental protections. So we need folks to contact your House representative to say vote no to House Bill 991 if you have not done so already. Okay, on more local news, So Frank, just real quick about Franklin County. So one of the members on Sierra Club had reached out to us concerning the rezoning in Lewisburg Fall. That's supposedly the largest rezoning in the county. It's going to be 45 acres of land. The concern is that there's no climate mitigation or open space with the current plan. So the Capital Group has sent a letter on June 17th calling for more renewables, dedicated transit, maximum parking requirement, affordable housing, and energy efficiency requirements. So hopefully the county commissioners of Franklin County will hear us out when based on what we send a letter. So these are the recent news with the conservation issues. And if you are interested in joining conservation committee, you can see at this we're dealing with a lot of issues out there. So we definitely need all the help we can get to monitor and address these concerns. And if you're interested, we have meeting Harvey, who is here with us on this call, and he's the co-chair of the conservation committee. Feel free to correct me if I'm wrong about the date, but supposedly the next meeting is on Tuesday, July 12th at 7 p.m. on Zoom. So if you have any questions about the committee, you want to be a part of it, you can email Harvey Richmond and Mara Frank. Yep. And just real quick about the political committee. So as you all know, midterm election, we've got a general election coming up. So with the Capital Group, we'll be looking at the general elections for the Congress and the North Carolina General Assembly, and also Raleigh City Council. And we are looking for volunteers. So anyone can help with canvassing and getting people out to vote. But if you want to get involved with the deeper activities specific to political committee, you have to be a due-paying member of Sierra Club. So if you're interested in helping either with canvassing or other things related to political activities, contact our political co-chair, Helen Todd, and Carl Wolkomsky. Okay. And just real quick about some upcoming events. So Sierra Club Capital Group, we have our exec committee meeting. Usually we have it on the first week of the month, but because it's July 4th, we'll be meeting next month on July 11th from 6 to 7:30 p.m. And here is the link. I will provide the link for folks who registered over a follow-up email after this. So if you're interested, everyone's welcome, and this is open to all. And then, of course, Tuesday is the Conservation Committee meeting, and this is a Zoom link. I'll also share with that afterwards. And once again, these are the list of the upcoming opportunity for meetings and public input concerning the Duke Carbon Plan. And I'm sure that Cassie will go into more details on this matter. Okay, and of course, taking actions. If you're interested, let us know via the sign-in form and let us know your conservation wish list. I will be sharing those on the follow-up email as well. And you can always stay in touch with us. We're on Meetup, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And you can also email us on capitalgroup@gmail.com. If you have any questions, you can email me. Well, through the Gmail, of course. All right. Now, without further ado, let's get into the reason why we are all here tonight, to learn about Duke's draft carbon plan. And I am glad to introduce Cassie, but Harvey, if you would like, the floor is yours to introduce Cassie and Christian.
Thanks, Juan. And it's my pleasure to introduce Cassie Gavin. She's been with the North Carolina chapter of the Sierra Club since 2013, so 9 years now. She is the Senior Director of Government Relations for the North Carolina chapter of the Sierra Club. She's an attorney who got her training at UNC Law School. Previously, Cassie worked as a land protection specialist at the North Carolina Coastal Land Trust in Wilmington for 7 years. She represents the Sierra Club before the General Assembly and lobbies legislators on environmental issues and works with the media and volunteers. I can say from walking out, doing events up in the General Assembly where we've had special days to lobby on issues or try to influence, Cassie is very much respected both by the news media as a source of honest information, as well as many of the legislators look to Cassie, as do our allies, as being an expert in energy and a number of the other issues that we've touched on this evening. She's joined by Christian La Spada, who is a Duke University Fellow in the Graduate School for working for a degree in environmental management. And he's serving with us as an intern with the Sierra Club this summer. So I'll turn it over to Cassie and Christian.
Thank you for the nice introduction, Harvey, and a pleasure to be here tonight with everyone. I'm based in Raleigh and talking to you from my house, but I grew up in Chapel Hill, so kind of a local. I'm also a Duke Energy customer, so I am very interested in what Duke has put forward for their proposed carbon plan. I will say that it's going to be our state carbon plan for how to reduce carbon emissions that the Utilities Commission is responsible for really doing the final and approving it. So I think we can call it, the North Carolina carbon plan going forward instead of the Duke carbon plan, because we'll see what we get by the end of the year, but I don't think it'll be exactly what Duke proposed. And thank you, Christian, for joining us tonight. Christian's going to help me present and talk about this, and he helped put together this presentation. So thanks everyone for joining again. To start with, I thought I would go backwards a little bit and talk about how we got here, because to many people it may seem pretty surprising that we even have a carbon plan being designed in North Carolina to address climate change and reduce carbon emissions, and that it was actually put into law by our General Assembly, which hasn't necessarily been the friendliest to the environment over the past decade. So, as many of us here appreciate, we obviously care about climate change. It's the top priority for Sierra Club to address. And, the window is rapidly closing. It's an urgent threat. It's not something we can wait around and figure out how to deal with it later. It's something that needs to be addressed now. And, Governor Cooper has recognized this. All environmental organizations and many businesses and leaders across the government, across the country and the world recognize this. That's why we have the Paris Agreement set in place by many countries. So basically, all of this is under this umbrella that we need to address climate change. That picture is just, one of many neighborhoods in North Carolina that's getting flooded regularly. So we're already seeing the impacts of climate change in our state. I'm sure everyone here has experienced that to some degree, and especially in Eastern North Carolina, there's just rainy day flooding now all of the time, and sea level rise and wetter hurricanes going forward. So we're seeing it needs to be addressed. I think we all agree on that. And Christian, can you go to the next slide, please? So looking back, how did we get here? How did we get the General Assembly to pass a law that requires the commission to adopt a carbon reduction plan? That seems strange in our state, but how it happened is that basically our monopoly utility, who serves most of North Carolina, unless you're in a co-op area, has been seeking to get multi-year rate making, which is a kind of rate making that makes it easier for them to set rates over multiple years and get a guaranteed rate of return. They sought that for a number of years previous to 2021, but they couldn't get it because groups from all across the board, including Sierra Club, were worried about the transparency impacts and the impacts to ratepayers. So pretty much everyone opposed that idea alone when it was brought forward in multiple different bills previous to 2021. So then in 2021, last year, a different kind of bill was negotiated amongst the governor's office, Democrats in the General Assembly, Republicans, and a lot of stakeholders. Environmental groups, unfortunately, and justice groups were not invited to the table. But what they did work out is a bill that included multi-year rate making, along with a carbon reduction goal that is in line with what Governor Cooper was seeking in his executive order 80, and that's in line with the Paris Agreement, basically. So groups like ours, Sierra Club, and many other environmental and justice groups were seeking in that bill to see a lot more consideration for low to moderate income customers. So we didn't get what we wanted there, but we certainly do appreciate the climate change goals and, you know, how the bill set in place a goal to reduce carbon emissions 70% and to get to carbon neutrality by 2050. So that's an ambitious goal, and North Carolina is the first state in the Southeast to have a goal like that. So it's a big change in direction for the state. The Utilities Commission is really the body directed to do the plan, to adopt it, to review it, and to run the stakeholder processes that are going on now. The Utilities Commission operates almost like a court. So if you're an intervener, you have to enter into the docket, and you have to, you know, submit reports and that kind of thing, and treat the commissioners basically like judges. So it's a little bit different than normal agency rulemaking. And Christian, next slide. I just thought I would throw a picture of a coal plant in there in case anyone has not seen a picture of one in a while. This is Blues. This is one of the coal plants that remains operating in North Carolina near us. So the carbon plan is all about reducing carbon emissions from power plants. And it's all about the coal-fired power plants that Duke Energy owns in North Carolina. That's the primary goal. There's lots of other goals that Governor Cooper has around reducing overall greenhouse gas emissions in the state, including transportation emissions, emissions from all kinds of different sources. But this carbon plan is really just targeting reducing carbon emissions from the energy sector and not looking at all of those other things, although lots of work is going on all of those other issues around the state right now as well. Next slide. So just a little other look back to what Governor Cooper has set in place. He's been very good on climate change. In 2018, he did an Executive Order 80 on climate change that kind of set the wheels turning to get to where we are today with this carbon plan being made. It created goals around climate change, and it directed DEQ to create a clean energy plan. That clean energy plan is what basically said, for North Carolina to reach these climate goals, the first thing that we need to do is reduce the carbon emissions from the power sector. And it said, you know, how much we're going to need to do that to meet the Paris Agreement goals that are in line with the state goals. And so kind of after that, the agencies and the government had, you know, their direction about where they had to get to address climate change. And that clean energy plan was used as part of what folks looked at when they were negotiating the bill that led to the carbon plan being required. The Executive Order 80 also set goals for EVs, electric vehicles, and set goals for, you know, statewide reduction in greenhouse gas emissions. And then those goals were updated and strengthened in a new executive order that was done January of this year, Executive Order 246. That one focuses more on transportation and equity, but it also updated the Executive Order 80 goals. Next slide. So, you know, after the carbon plan was set into law, that it had to happen, there was an interest by all parties to have some stakeholder process leading up to it. Sierra Club participated in this along with lots of other folks. I would not say that it was perfect by any means, but groups like Sierra Club did push a lot on some of the assumptions that were being made by Duke in the beginning. And, you know, those were around, you know, solar and offshore wind, hydrogen and small nuclear. So there was lots of assumptions that they kind of started out with that stakeholders pushed against, and we did see some changes to those assumptions, which was good because then those assumptions fed into the modeling that will be used, or that Duke used to create their draft carbon plan, and that other groups will be, you know, looking at when they draft their alternative plans. So next slide. So the bill that was passed in 2021 was House Bill 951, and that was signed into law late last year. So it hasn't been too long, but that's set into place basically a timeline for the Utilities Commission to move ahead and create a final plan by the end of this year. So that's the goal. Duke filed their proposed plan mid-May, like Hua mentioned. And then stakeholders like us are due to turn in our like alternative plans or comments or whatever we want to say about the Duke plan July 15th. So pretty soon. And once we do that, that'll be public information and that'll be all out to be shared with y'all, anyone who's interested. Basically, we're working with a lot of other environmental groups and justice groups to present a really weighty and based on modeling alternative plan that is more focused on wind and solar and renewables, less focused on new gas plants. So next slide. A little bit more about the carbon plan. If you want to read it, it's very long with lots of attachments, but you can go check it out at Duke Energy's website. You could probably just Google Duke Energy's carbon plan and you'd get there, or you can use that link. The law said that it'll be updated every 2 years. So this is going to be something that Sierra Club and other groups that are interested in this work are going to be working on for a long time. It won't be over at the end of this year. We'll keep at it. That's kind of like the integrated resource plan process that already is in place, where the utility has to come forward to the commission and propose a plan for the next couple of years and look forward far into the future, talking about how they'll generate their energy and what sources they'll use. But this is like that, but very specifically targeted to carbon emission reductions. So we also have a commission public staff, which if you're not familiar with the Utilities Commission, they are supposed to represent us, all the customers. And they have a pretty big staff that work with the Utilities Commission, and they will be putting forward their plan as well. And, sometimes the Attorney General also gets involved in these cases to represent consumers. So I imagine we'll see, a lot of commentary in mid-July from every kind of stakeholder that there is. But you'll hear more from us after that. And then what we saw from Duke, you would not be surprised, Sierra Club is somewhat critical of it. We think they could do a lot better. And, we're urging the Utilities Commission to look at our plan when we put it forward in July and, consider making a whole lot of changes to what Duke proposed and doing a much better plan with lots more renewables and lots less fossil fuels. But what Duke did propose is several pathways and 4 different portfolios, they're calling them, instead of like just one plan, which is makes it more complicated to review and gives everyone a lot to chew on. But basically, it seems like they wanted to, maintain a lot of options and flexibility in what their possibilities are going forward. So rather than just selecting one pathway, they put forward like all the possible pathways that they could think of and ask for that to be approved, which is complicated. Next slide. Yeah, so a little bit more on Duke Energy's proposed carbon plan. This slide sets out what is in the 4 different portfolio options that they have put forward. Now, the law, remember, calls for 70% carbon emissions reductions by 2030, but the only one of their pathways that they have described in their plan would get us there. So that's already a problem. And then the other pathways that they put forward would not reach that goal. So you could make an argument that that does not really comply with the spirit of the law. Now, the law does allow for Duke to seek a delay if they're looking to do offshore wind or nuclear, but to seek a delay right now when it's 2022 before any of this has started going seems preemptive to Sierra Club. And then the other major problem that we see, among many others that I'll describe, is that all of the options put forward by Duke would require new gas plants. So new fracked gas plants being built, new fracked gas pipelines coming into the state to supply those plants, and that of course means tons of new methane emissions, which contribute to climate change. So also not in the spirit of the plan, or not in the spirit of the law, really, at all. And I'll note that, offshore wind is a proven technology, so we are encouraged to see that, but there's a lot of reliance on the idea that there will be small modular nuclear available. That technology is not exactly proven. It's not being used in the United States. It's not authorized yet. So it could become a reality, but it seems unwise to rely so much on it when it's not proven yet. So next slide. So some positives that we see in the proposed plan are a lot more solar. We would argue there needs to be a whole lot more than even they have put forward, but it would be more than we have now. Wind energy, onshore and offshore wind are proposed. And Harvey and Hua and Christian, I'm not able to see the chat and present at the same time. So if y'all happen to see questions that you can answer, I do see questions popping up there, but we will have a question and answer section at the end as well.
Yeah, sorry, Cassie, there's one question. I don't know if you want to answer it now or later.
Sure.
Yeah. This is from Lori O'Loughlin. Where will the commentary be available to review?
Okay, yeah, after it's filed at the commission. So I would say the 15th or the 16th of July, if you're asking about Sierra Club's comments. And everyone else's comments too would also be available at that point. So some other positives, energy efficiency and demand side management are included, but we would like to see a lot more. And in all of the scenarios that Duke puts forward, they would all result in closing all of the coal plants in North Carolina. So that is a big deal. We think they should do it on a faster timeline than they have proposed, but that is something that Sierra Club has been seeking for many years, both in North Carolina and across the country. So we can be proud of that. Next slide. So as I mentioned, one of the big problems that we see with the proposed plan so far is that it proposes new gas. Of course, the gas that's burned comes from fracking primarily, and a lot of that comes from Pennsylvania and has to be shipped down through pipelines. And there's a Mountain Valley pipeline, proposed to go through Virginia and then to be extended into South Carolina. That's not yet done. It's caught up in the courts. It may or may not get built. It may or may not get approved. But, this proposed plan kind of relies on that. So it's a problem to build new gas plants. It's a problem to, burn all that gas to contribute to climate change. And then also you just have like a economic problem with building new gas plants that may very soon just not be competitive and could have been, they could have been solar and wind and energy efficiency and energy storage instead. So you might just end up with the same problem we have now, which is a bunch of old, now we have a bunch of old uneconomic coal plants that need to be retired before the end of their useful life because they're just not efficient anymore. So you could end up with the same thing happening with gas plants. If you build them now, they may become, basically uneconomic in the future. And then I mentioned, relying on the small modular nuclear being a problem, but also there's a lot of talk in the plan about relying on hydrogen, which is, potentially useful for some sector of uses, but hydrogen is only clean if it comes from being produced by clean sources, like being produced by renewables. If you're using gas plants to make hydrogen, then it's not clean and it doesn't really help us with climate change. So there could be high costs to ratepayers, and we don't know if these scenarios will meet the timelines that are needed to address climate change in time. Next slide. So some more on what's missing. The biggest missing thing that's problematic is really any consideration for environmental justice, for low-income ratepayers. that was something that we really advocated for during the negotiations on House Bill 951 and did not get. So there's still a big question about, if rates go up, will there be consideration for protecting low-income ratepayers, because people in North Carolina, many are already facing energy burden. That was, shown to be a big problem during COVID because of people losing jobs and already facing energy burden. So there was some efforts by the Cooper administration to put some money towards that, helping folks with energy bills, but there needs to be a long-term solution for that. And what a lot of states have done is implement like a cap on bills for low to moderate income folks, where you're not going to be paying more than a certain percentage of income. We don't have that in North Carolina, but that's something that we would like to see. And then also the plan is missing some level of transparency in the modeling. Often Duke doesn't provide all of that to the public. They keep a lot of it to themselves. So it makes it tough for interveners or the public to really examine where they're getting their data from and how they're getting to these plans. And it doesn't include the social cost of carbon, which we think that all states and utilities should be considering at this point going forward. Next slide. And this is just to emphasize that, the justice aspect of it is really questionable and not addressed at all in the proposed Duke plan. Next slide. So I mentioned coal plants, and that's the focus of the carbon plan, moving away from those and moving to other non-carbon emissions sources. So, I mentioned they would all eventually be retired, which is great, but we would advocate that a number of them should be retired much sooner than is put forward in the plan. And actually, some of the previous Duke plans proposed closing coal plants earlier than they have proposed in the carbon plan. So that seems strange to us. We'd like to see them all closed as soon as possible. And something that is in the bill that passed last year is something that'll help save ratepayers and customers money. It's called securitization, and it basically allows the company Duke to securitize some of their expenses and save customers money by getting a low interest bond and paying off the costs of closing coal plants earlier than they would otherwise. So it ends up in savings for customers, but it ends up in less profits for Duke Energy. So they can do some of that now, and they should. It's a little unclear in the plan whether they definitely plan to do that and when they will do that. The sooner they do that, the more savings for customers. The later they do that, the less savings for us, the more profits for the company. Next slide. So once again, gas plants are the major problem in all of these scenarios. We're asking the Utilities Commission to just not approve a plan that has new gas plants in it, and rather focus on solar, wind energy, energy storage, and energy efficiency. Next slide. So I mentioned energy efficiency and demand side management. These are policies and things that the Utilities Commission could order Duke to do to basically reduce energy use. And there's a lot of different kinds of programs all over the board for these that different states are doing, different utilities are using. So it wouldn't be creating anything from scratch. Many other states have much higher energy efficiency goals for their utilities. So we could raise our energy efficiency goals above what they are now. And we think that would make a big difference. And energy efficiency is, probably the most affordable energy thing you can do. So that would be good for customers as well. Next slide. I'll pass it to Christian for some wrap up and letting us know what we can do next.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Cassie. Good evening, everyone. So everything that Cassie said, as far as what's missing in the plan and what we're looking at, overall, Duke Energy's draft carbon plan receives a failing grade. And we're really highlighting that they failed to center stakeholder feedback, They fail to establish comprehensive metrics for success. They don't set an ambitious timeline for closing coal plants, and they also allow for new gas. So overall, they're receiving a failing grade. So what can you do? How can you get involved? And there's several ways you can do that. So the first way is you can provide public testimony at one of the 5 upcoming hearings. There's some in Durham, Wilmington, Asheville, Charlotte, and there'll be 2 virtually. And so if you wanted to sign up to do that, you'll be under oath and you can testify. You'll register in advance by 5 p.m. August 16th by emailing ncucpublichearing@ncuc.net. Or you can call the number here on the slides, and we'll be providing these slide decks so you can access all these links and emails.
Christian, this is Harvey Richmond. I just want to clarify something. My understanding is if you're going to be testifying in person to Durham or any of those other locations, you don't have to sign up until that night. It's for the webinar, WebEx version, the last 2 days of the hearings. That one you have to sign up in advance, and they're only allowing 20 people per session. 20 for the daytime and 20 in the evening.
Yes, exactly, Harvey. Thank you for that clarification. Yeah, and last we heard around the 20 participants for the virtual hearings. It sounds like there's still spots available, but you'll definitely want to register in advance and sooner rather than later to get in. And what we heard for the public testimony is that you'll get 5 minutes to do that. So we really want to prep beforehand, write it out beforehand. It's good to start with possibly a personal narrative on how this is going to impact you, and you can expand upon that. But we're happy to help in any way that we can. And if you did plan on attending the virtual session and you wanted to register and you couldn't be one of those 20 people, you can also submit written comments if that's more comfortable for you. So customers can submit comments electronically to the submission, to the commission, sorry. And we have the form right here where you can submit comments. And statements about the carbon plan must reference the docket number E100 sub 179. And you'll want to submit those comments by the end of August. And just so those upcoming hearings, so you have those dates and addresses, the Durham and Wilmington ones are going to be the week of July 11th. So Durham is Monday, July 11th at 7 p.m. and then Wilmington is July 12th at 7 p.m. And then Asheville and Charlotte are 2 weeks after that. So Wednesday, that's 27th at 7 p.m. in Asheville, and then Thursday, July 28th in Charlotte. And then again, those virtual hearings there'll be 2 on Tuesday, August 23rd, one at 1:30 and one at 6:30. And you want to register in advance for that and sign up to give public testimony under oath. And they haven't released a link for that hearing, the virtual hearings just yet, but you want to check on their website. And then as Cassie mentioned earlier, just some key dates to keep in mind. July 15th is the deadline for alternative plans to be submitted by interveners, like the Sierra Clubs, so we plan on that. And then December 31st is the deadline for the commission to submit the final North Carolina carbon plan to the legislature. And then what else can you do? You can also submit opt-eds or letters to editors, and Sierra Club is happy to help you. You can reach out to Michaela Curry. She offered to help review plans, help type it up for folks if folks were interested in doing that. Yeah, to sum it up in one word, what you really want to tell the North Carolina Utilities Commission is that we're ready for a clean energy economy. It's going to take all of us to do that. Yeah. That was our presentation, folks. So I think we can open it up to questions.
Yeah, this is Harvey again. One clarifying point. If you're going to send in testimony or comments or be either in the virtual meeting or the in-person, you shouldn't reference your Sierra Club membership. You're acting as a citizen or any other of the interveners. So like NC Warren or any of the other groups. You want to identify that you're a ratepayer or a customer or a citizen in North Carolina. We can't double dip. You can't both represent individual comments as Sierra Club when the intervener, Sierra Club's staff are going to submit the official Sierra Club comment.
Yes, exactly. Thank you so much, Harvey. That is a very important point. Don't identify yourself with an organization. Identify yourself as a customer or ratepayer.
I see Nancy Donnelly has a question. Nancy, would you like to unmute yourself and let us know what you're wondering about?
Yes, the docket number again, I missed it for comments.
Yeah, I can share the slide again so folks can write that down. But we'll also be sending out this this slide deck so folks can see that.
E100, thank you.
Yeah.
So, and just want to make sure that the question has been fully clarified. I know Lori McLaughlin earlier asked about where they can see the, I guess, the commentary, and the follow-up question was, is it found on the commission website? This is about where the commentary be available for review. So.
Yeah, Cassie, I don't know if you want to take this one. Is that the Sierra Club commentary or?
So to answer that, all of the comments that are submitted will be available on the Utilities Commission website if you enter that docket number. But I will tell you, it's not the easiest thing in the world to search through that website. Sierra Club, after we submit our comments, will be sharing information about our alternative plan with all of our members and publicly. So you'll hear from us if you're a Sierra Club member or supporter. But if you want to go on the Utilities Commission website and find it, you also can do that.
Yep. And Rob Myers has a question during a chat. I know it was Kathy Buckley. Thanks for answering that. But just wondering if Cassie might have something to add to it. Does the energy efficient and demand side management include rooftop solar? And Kathy's answer for that was that Duke includes that in the DER, demand energy resources, but they are minimizing it as it is. So it's because it's a direct threat to the monopoly power. So Cassie, do you have any additional comments, or do you feel like that's sufficiently answered?
I guess we both answered it in different ways. So, I was thinking about it as like, are they going to help people with rooftop solar? And the answer is pretty much no. I mean, they have a very small rooftop solar program that very few people get to participate in. So, we can't count on the carbon plan to help private homeowners with rooftop solar, I wouldn't say. If that was what the question was getting at, I'm not sure.
Okay. Rob, feel free to let us know if you have any follow-up questions for that. You can either raise your hand or just type in the chat again. Okay, so anyone else have any questions? You'd like to raise your hand, put stack in the chat and we'll call on you, or you could just type the question directly. In the meantime, I do have a logistical question, actually. Christian, you mentioned that we can send in a public comment, the written comment toward the end of August. Does that mean that we can basically send them emails on our thoughts on the matter well after the last virtual hearing? So does that mean we can send comments right into like August 31st, I guess?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
And you wouldn't be sending an email directly. You'll want to be submitting the form. And in the slide deck, we have a link to that form that'll be sent out.
Mm-hmm. And in the spirit of sending written comments, Lori O'Loughlin is wondering about contact info for writing letters or help in writing letters. So just for clarification, Lori, are you referring to sending letters to the Utilities Commission, or are you referring to sending an editorial to the newspaper? Editorials, there was a person mentioned.
I will drop Michaela's name and email in the chat, so you have it.
Just to clarify, Michaela is with is new with the Beyond Coal part of Sierra Club.
And to add a little more to that answer, every newspaper has its different context to where you send letters to the editor, and letters to the editor have to be really short. So, you might not even need help with that after you've seen this webinar. If you feel like writing and sending off a letter to the editor that's, just a couple paragraphs about this, that's the kind of thing they're looking for. And you can usually look at the opinion section of the newspaper and find that contact email.
Yeah, if anyone wants help with that, they can also contact me. I've gotten several published in the News and Observer, and I can send you examples of ones we've done, like on the coal clean power plan.
Yeah, Harvey's our expert letter to the editor writer.
Cassie, a question. I've gotten through most of the executive summary, and if I was a not informed consumer, I see no mention really of methane. Duke calls, instead of frack gas, they call it low carbon natural gas, and basically take credit for using some of those coal-fired power plants to be converted over to low carbon nat gas. Does the legislation HB 951 say anything about methane, or is it just silent? And does the second part of that, does the commission have the latitude or flexibility to bring those kind of considerations into play? I would think they would.
So the legislature and the law was purposefully silent on what sources would replace coal. They wanted to leave it to the commission, the experts, to decide that. And so they left it open. So the commission can choose what sources will replace coal within the bounds of law. They have to go with what's reasonable and prudent. But there's, quite a lot of flexibility within that.
And Kathy, you have a question? Feel free to unmute.
Yeah, I just wanted to elaborate on Cassie's response. You got to remember that the law in North Carolina is energy law is always written by Duke Energy. So they were involved, they do the first draft. They're involved in the negotiations. They have a lot to say about what comes out. Not everything, but quite a bit. And so they purposely did not put methane into the legislation. That doesn't mean they can't voluntarily actually address it, but that chance that's going to happen.
Sorry. I have a couple questions on that end, though. I saw that you have they're gonna send in the final draft in December 2022. So I'm just wondering, like, if they send it in, then will there be other opportunities to comment, or would this summer be it?
So the commission's deadline to create a final plan is the end of the year. So what the commission is doing right now is, they've got the Duke plan. They're going to get alternative plans from us, from lots of other stakeholders. And then the commission has to go and work that out and come up with a final plan. Then it'll be re-reviewed every 2 years.
And I guess just want to make sure so the public has any opportunity for chiming in during those 2 years period at any point, or not really?
So, the public in general can always weigh in on any docket at the Utilities Commission by submitting, statements, public statements, but it's unclear like how much those are considered. To really be part of the negotiations on a docket, you have to be an intervener, and that costs a lot of money, to be honest. It takes a lot of time. It takes lawyers, basically. And that's why groups like Sierra Club team up with lots of other groups usually to be able to afford that. So it's a really difficult venue to engage in and be successful in. It makes it hard.
Yeah. And I see that Josh Bradley has his hand raised. Josh, would you like to unmute?
Can you hear me?
Perfectly.
Yeah, I've got a question, and it's only adjacently related to this. Are groups like the Sierra Club and other environmentalist groups getting to the point where they're discussing trying to pressure the state into ending the monopoly situation and taking over Duke Power and giving it to the consumers or selling it to the consumers? Is that something that any of the environmental groups are working on now, like making it a public utility again? Over. Not that it ever has been. But.
Yeah, thank you for that question. I think you're talking about, like breaking up the monopoly and improving competition, which is definitely something that is discussed. It's being talked about in South Carolina. There's a study underway. There was a study bill put forward in multiple years in a row, including last year, to look at that very question in North Carolina. But Duke Energy has always opposed it strongly, even studying the idea. You wouldn't be surprised to hear that. And then the bill hasn't gone forward. So it's not happening. It's not being forced by the legislature. Definitely groups are interested in that and talking about it, but it's not a big push right now, I wouldn't say, just because trying to make it happen is a big question mark.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, just a clarification. Now, I'm more talking about taking Duke Power or Duke Energy and turning it from a for-profit corporation into a cooperative owned by the consumers of the product, where that cuts out the profit motive entirely and it works for people. Is that being organized?
Yeah, no, that I have not heard that being pushed by groups. The legislature would have to be the ones to change the law for that, but it's definitely an idea we're thinking about and talking about.
Thank you.
And to answer one of the questions that is in here, does the legislature have to accept the Utilities Commission plan or can they change it? That's a question from Rob. And the legislature makes the laws, so they can make a different law if they don't like the plan. But there is a lot of momentum behind the law that exists, and it was, hard negotiated and a bipartisan agreement. So I would be surprised if the legislature were to jump immediately back in there and change it as soon as it comes out, but they are free to do that if they have the votes.
And just real quick, there's a question before that from Lori. Is there a good summary of HB 951 somewhere that I guess you can go to for review? I'm just wondering, is Sierra Club have a place where we have summarized HB 951, or is there a place to refer people to?
I don't think we have anything on our website just for that, but we have the 2021 legislative report that's available on our website, and that has a section that's pretty lengthy about that bill.
Great. Yep. And just wanted to shout out. So I know we were just talking about the issue of Duke Monopoly a little bit. So Amelia Covington shared a link from Energy Justice NC Coalition on a petition to break up monopoly. Kathy Buckley, separate from that, I think this is about another webinar promoted by Fossil Free NC. I think that's another informational webinar on this particular issue if people would like to have more information. Yeah. Let's see. Actually, on that note, Kathy, this is for Kathy Buckley. Would you like to kind of summarize what you have talked about, what folks might have talked about in Fossil Free NC that could add to this current webinar, or if you like generate some information?
Yeah, the group that did the the report card on the carbon plan, and the Sierra Club and Apple and many other organizations are involved in that coalition. We did a webinar last Wednesday, and so I've included the link in the chat that you can see that. And just to note that one of the speakers was Nancy LaPlaca, and she spoke directly about becoming an intervener as an individual. So it's not apparently it's not complicated. You don't have to have a lawyer, and then that means that that your comments basically carry more weight because they do have to actually contend with them. Whether they really pay that much attention to the public comments, I'm assuming they do, but they really have to pay attention when you're interviewing.
Thanks for the synopsis, Kathy. Yeah. And I see Jane Barnett, I think your question is sort of being addressed when, I guess, Cassie Gavin, you'll get back to Jane after you find out more about Duke, whether or not they have facility related to natural gas storage facilities. That'll be interesting to know, because given that methane is problematic in and of itself. Yeah. Okay. Let's see. Anyone has any other questions I'd like to ask pertaining to the carbon plan, opportunity to intervene, to speak, or any other question related to Duke Energy? Okay, going once. Well, let's see. Oh, Robert, you unmuted yourself. Do you have a question you'd like to ask, or you don't?
No, I don't. I was just trying to get back online.
All right, Robert. Thanks. Yeah. But let's see. If there's no further questions, then I will move to conclude the webinar tonight. If you have any further questions, you can feel free to email me, and I will forward any question to Cassie, or Cassie has provided her email in the chat, cassie.gavin@sierraclub.org. I'll also be sending a follow-up email for sure, so that way you'll have our contacts, any information that might be valuable to you pertaining to the carbon plan and how to sign up. And yeah, without further ado, so thanks again for joining in, and thanks for weighing on the carbon plan, as Cassie said. And we hope to see you again in our next monthly program. All right.
I just want to thank Cassie and Christian for their time this evening.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care.
Good night, all.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.